Hi guys, welcome back to my podcast. Well, do you know what? I can't really say welcome back. It sort of is like welcome back, but it isn't. I'm changing the name and I'm going to tell you guys why in a second. But yeah, I'm changing the name of the podcast and different things are going to be happening here. Different conversations are going to be had. And yeah, I think the reason for this is I didn't feel like I was being authentic necessarily. Obviously, I am a mother. That's not a lie. And, you know, I was sharing my experience with you guys as it was happening. But when I say I was being inauthentic, what I really mean is there are other conversations that I've been meaning to have. And I sort of tucked those, buried them in my secret place, so to speak. So, you know, I just feel like now that I'm sat here, it feels like I'm finally doing this podcast thing the right way. And I think it's a real call to, it's a real call to myself to, you know, do the things that I really do have it in my heart to do and not what I think people need from me. You know, I'm not somebody famous, but I'm someone of value. I have value to offer. One of the things that a lot of my friends have said in the past is that I give great advice, and I'm a good listener. So, you know, those are, you know, I think those are really, really key and important traits. But anyway, not to keep talking about myself. So the name of my new podcast is Soulvation. So think of it as a continuation from what I used to do, but a completely different subject matter. Motherhood will still be part of the conversation, but just more in terms of like personal development and just sort of, it just won't be the way it was before. I'm not going to be talking all about motherhood. There are so many other conversations I want to have, and I just didn't want to confine or limit myself. So yeah, that's sort of where we are. So the name of the new podcast is Soulvation. It's a tie-up of the two words soul and salvation. Soul sort of being, you know, my choice of word for representing what I view as me, you know, and I think that's something that's intangible. It's not something you can feel like your body or a lot of other things in life. Who I am will transcend this realm, this moment, this time. It transcends all of that. You know, I'm going to die one day, but my consciousness, my being, my soul, that lives on. So that's why I've chosen that word. And the word salvation, it means to save something, to protect something from peril, from destruction, from trauma, you name it. And so I thought, you know what, Soulvation, that sounds good, because this is sort of like me journeying to my center, to myself, my core, and sort of healing all of my trauma. And in having these conversations, it's sort of like getting a step closer towards becoming my authentic and healed self, if that makes sense. But yeah, I don't claim to be an expert, and I'm definitely not. I'm just a human being sharing her experience with you guys. That is literally what this is. So yeah, if you were around for the MILF tea, I would appreciate if you guys stick around for this one, because these are really the conversations I want to have, and you'll see it. My face is going to light up. We're going to be talking about so much stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. So for today, I'm going to be talking about people pleasing, and boundaries, and just, you know, our sense of value and learning to not tie that into people's perception of who we are. So that is the conversation today. Quite a mouthful, but yeah, it's a lot, but we'll get into it. We'll get through it. So I think the best place to start is probably discussing what boundaries are, and just what each of those terms is, what boundaries are, what people pleasing is. So let's sort of go through it. So with boundaries, I've got a couple notes here, so you might find me looking, because I've sort of pre-written most of this episode because it was just in my heart. I was just typing this morning, and I was like, fuck it, this is going to be a podcast episode, and excuse my language, that will happen. And yeah, as you guys know, I have a son, so sometimes life might just be happening and you might hear things going on, but let's not let that distract us from the conversation we're having. Stay tuned, and obviously you can take it back or go forward, whatever you need to do. So I'm going to start with boundaries. So a boundary is respecting the connection that exists whilst acknowledging and also respecting the separation. So what do I mean by that? Respecting the connection that exists whilst acknowledging and also respecting the separation. It's saying, I have a connection with you. I love you, I feel close to you, but I also understand that there are barriers. There are certain places where I can't be this close to you. There are certain areas in your life where there is independence, and that is what must absolutely rule. And so I think this is what boundaries are. It's honoring the fact that, yes, I feel connected to you. Yes, we have a connection. Yes, you're important to me. Yes, you're special to me. Yes, I'm invested in what we have going on here, whether that be a friendship, whether that be a family connections, whether that be an actual relationship. But the point is, I'm respecting this connection that we have, but at the same time, I understand that we are separate beings. And in being separate beings, there are separate ideologies, separate beliefs, separate values, and those things have to be respected. So, a boundary is respecting the connection that exists whilst acknowledging and also respecting the separation. It's the balance between both knowing that we are connected but not joint, and not allowing fear to fester in the space that also exists within that connection. So let me give you an example. Let's say we are best friends. I love you. I enjoy spending time with you. I confide in you about all of the things that I go through. We're like this. We are literally glued together. We're bonded. And in that bonding, sometimes lines can get a little bit blurred. Boundaries are things like, okay, yeah, I can give you advice, but I'm not going to sit on the phone with you for 10 hours and waste my entire day and then build up resentment because I didn't have the assertiveness to say no. So that is a practical example of a boundary being put in action. So you are that friend that they go to for advice, but your boundary is that, yes, I can advise you, but this advice is not the be all and end all of your life. And I'm also not going to give you 10 hours of my time advising you, knowing that later on you will not take that advice. So that is the boundary sort of put into action. Now, why are boundaries important? Boundaries are important because they sort of help us to preserve ourselves, our being. Think of your being as like a lot of energy. And the less you respect and maintain your boundaries, the more your energy is no longer preserved for you, but it's just sort of going out to all of these places. And as it's going out, what's coming back, what's feeding back to you is resentment. Resentment because you didn't set your boundaries. You weren't assertive. You didn't say no and say it with so much conviction. And I think that's really, really, really important. So sorry, guys, like I said, I might be looking at my notes sometimes. So I've written here that as a child, I loosely remember feeling alienated a lot of the time. I lived in a predominantly white area and we were one of the only black families there. I remember desperately wanting to be seen by the cool kids, and I don't remember how I went about achieving that. But I think that's because there was so much shame around being wanted desperately by people who bullied and alienated me, which is why I can't remember the exact experience of trying to get myself being seen. But hey, Stockholm Syndrome much. But yeah, so being a people pleaser, let's go into that. And all of this ties into each other. I'm going to come back to the boundaries thing because being a people pleaser is sort of one of the main ways that we sort of completely eradicate our boundaries and that whole system of erecting and keeping them in place to protect and preserve ourselves. So being a people pleaser, it means denying yourself. And when you deny yourself the power of choice and you deny yourself the power of choice and you constantly give in to the need of other people, you lose and disempower yourself. You also send a message that it's okay for these people to deplete you because before they made the choice to, you already did that for them. So with people pleasing, what we're doing is we're saying, forget what I need. What I need isn't important. In pleasing you, I'm pleased. If you're happy, I'm happy. But it's a very warped way to sort of tune ourselves. If you're tuned into somebody else, like let me give you an example, a best friend example again. I have a best friend. And there is this expression that goes, you are who you hang out with. And that tends to be quite true. When you have friends, you tend to have similar interests, similar tastes, things that you believe in, stuff like that, right? But the point is, you get to a point where it's sort of like, I don't want these lines being blurred, right? And people pleasing is sort of going, okay, maybe you have an opinion on something, and to please you, I'm going to agree with that opinion, even if every bone in my body is like, I don't agree with this. It doesn't resonate with me. It's not my way. It's not my thought process. It's just not me. But you deny yourself that truth. You deny yourself the resonance of that truth because you want so badly to please somebody else, because in pleasing somebody else, you feel pleased, and you sort of internalize that feeling and think that, yes, I'm pleased. But the truth of the matter is, no, eventually, once you build up blocks of doing this consistently, you start to build so much resentment for it. You get angry at these people because you've put this person on a pedestal, and the moment they don't sort of conform to or do whatever it is that you need, we end up demonizing them. This is what we do. And this is why, people pleasing is it's a massive, massive, massive area. And, I the reason I wanted to have this conversation was because I think it's important. And it's one of the biggest ways in which, as I said, we completely eradicate that system of boundaries for ourselves. So the truth of the matter is, I'm still working on and learning about my discomfort in setting boundaries. And when I find myself doing that, my inner roommate might go, oh, who the hell do you think you are? What are you doing? Like, who the fuck told you could do that? Like, I will literally, there will be a voice in my head saying this stuff to me. And the truth of the matter is, like, instead of internalizing what that voice is saying, I should respond back and be like, listen, I'm a woman with the right to choose in every facet of her life. That's who the fuck I think I am. And that is why I'm setting these boundaries relentlessly, because it's so, so important to do that. And I'm not saying I'm setting them now, but I'm saying in that hypothetical sense, that is why this woman, me, so to speak, is setting her boundaries. Because yeah, I'm a woman who has the right to choose. When we relinquish that power to other people, it's sort of like, who are you? Who are you if everything you are is a culmination of somebody else's decision, somebody else's opinion, somebody else's thought? So if person A thinks this way, you're going to think that way as well. And you sort of just become a carbon copy of that person. And I've found myself in that position in my life. I don't know why I feel so much shame saying this. And I think there's a lot of shame in saying this or sharing this with you guys, or just a feeling like a blanket of shame on me, because I feel like for a very long time this has been. But yeah, as I was saying, I feel like this is something I've done for a very long time. I haven't been committed to getting to know myself, spending time with myself, understanding myself, knowing what my values are, what my beliefs are. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I have absolutely no idea of those things, but I think I'm one of those people who went through a lot of her childhood sort of, try not to cry. I went through my childhood disappointing my parents quite a lot. And I think I really internalized a lot of their disappointment. And I somewhere in my childhood, I decided that it was not okay to disappoint people. And, as I said, I internalized that disappointment, and this just bred a real discomfort and aversion to just being wrong or disappointing people. So if I ever felt like, oh my God, I don't want to be wrong. I hate to be wrong. And when I say I hate to be wrong, I mean, I hate doing the wrong thing. I hate hurting people's feelings. I hate answering a question and getting the answer wrong. Being wrong, it terrifies me. It absolutely scares the shit out of me. And this comes from a pattern, of consistently internalizing that disappointment. And, I attached my value as a person to being good and right. So if I wasn't good, if I wasn't right, then I was just a bad person, and I wasn't really somebody of value. I had no value to offer up to the world because I wasn't good and because I wasn't right. And it's really crazy how defining our childhood is, and just the methodology of the way the brain is working. You don't realize that all of those little sparks, like between all your brain cells and these thoughts that are happening and just everything, it's imprinting itself on you. And as it's imprinting itself on you, it's almost like a computer program just coding on its own, making this algorithm that this is how you are going to act in your adulthood, because this is the trauma that you have lived through in your childhood. And it's so crazy, but our childhood is the blueprint for our adult life. And this is why it's really, really important that we sort of, do the work to heal ourselves when we realize that, my childhood blueprint has sort of led to a really fucked up adult life. and I need to take the accountability and heal myself. And, you know, one of the things I actually saw today that was really beautiful was a friend of mine, Jade. She posted a picture on Instagram of herself and her mum and her sister, and said she's healing her inner child. And I don't know why that's just come into my mind right now, but healing the inner child it's really, really, really important. So that being said, you know, another thing that I sort of want to touch on, because they all tie into each other. So with the people pleasing thing and being afraid to be wrong, this sort of put me in a position where I would sort of put everybody else's needs above mine. And so it meant I no longer had boundaries. So for instance, and I'll be honest, there is some error there. There is something, not some error, I don't know what the word is, but there is something problematic about that. That is the word I'm trying to say. There's something problematic about it, in the sense that if a friend called me and there was an issue, or they were crying, or they were upset, I'm the kind of friend that will drop everything, and my son and I, we're coming over, and we're going to make sure that you're okay. I'm going to make sure you're fine. And I never really thought there was anything wrong with me doing that, but the fact that I did that every single time, no matter what I had going on, no matter what I was doing, and it's kind of scary, the message I was sending. In a way, I didn't realize that in a way I was sending that message of, don't respect me. I can take this. I can do this for the both of us. You don't have to do anything. This is the message that I've shared really with a lot of people in my life, even those who are good to me, even those who do love me, and even those who do care about me, because this has been my way without realizing. They've just sort of taken over, oh, that's her way, and they just operate within that space. And it's up to me to decide how people are going to treat me. If I am not available to you 24/7, then you won't just be pinging my phone 24/7, needing advice, needing help, or whatever it is. And that's just one example. I'm not saying that's happening, but that is just one example. So, you know, I think it's really, boundaries are so important. Now, let's talk about the first step in actually comfortably doing that. And the truth of the matter is, there is no comfortable way to set boundaries. I have to be honest, there's no comfortable way to do that. Human beings have been conditioned to fear pain, hurt, discomfort, and fear itself. We've been conditioned to do that. But very often, these states of being and emotion are truly transformative. In Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed, and you guys know I love this book, I rave about it all the time, she tells us that all feelings are for feeling, and that we can feel pain and survive, and that we can use pain to become. So pain can be our becoming. And there is something really freeing about her perspective here. And I think it's the idea that to get to the other side, you simply need to allow yourself to feel. So to get to that point of comfortably setting boundaries, you need to just feel the discomfort. It's that simple. And it's that way with anything in life. To get over the fear of falling, you need to just allow yourself to fall. To get over the fear of spiders, you need to just allow yourself to hold a spider, touch it, and see it doing its thing. We see these practices every single day. Like, that's the only way to feel it. Do you know what I mean? So why do we deny ourselves? Why do we deny ourselves the experience of becoming? Because we're afraid of pain, because we're afraid of fear, because the world has told us those feelings are bad feelings and you should never feel them. And it's not true. It just isn't true. The truth of the matter is, on the other side of a lot of those feelings is something very, very positive, and as she said, transformative. So when you're setting your boundaries, bloody fucking do it. So even if your voice is shaking, even if you're scared to say, look, listen, this is my boundary, I can't do this, just do it. Just do it. Because the truth of the matter is, over time, you get to a point where doing that becomes comfortable. It becomes your way. It becomes your mantra. It becomes your norm. And I think that's really, 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 really important. Because when we dishonor ourselves to benefit others, our inner dialogue that starts, it just never ceases. The moment you dishonor yourself and you don't set boundaries, there's this inner dialogue telling you, why did you do this? Why did you do that? You should have done this. You should have done that. And you're sat there dealing with all of these things while the person that you allowed to cross your boundary is sitting in peace, because, well, hey, they don't even know they crossed the boundary because you never put it up in place. You never let them know. And this is just, it's really, really important. And the truth of the matter is, I'm still learning so much about this. I'm learning a lot about boundaries. I'm learning how to not cross them. I myself have found myself in a situation recently where I did cross someone's boundary, and it has been really uncomfortable learning how to navigate that, learning to not judge myself, and learning to not internalize this mistake that I've made, and equate my value as a person to that action. It's been difficult. It's been really difficult because the mind is so powerful, but I'm starting to understand that behind that, if that inner voice is talking and I'm listening to it, then that inner voice can't be me. And you know what? This is a whole other conversation from another episode of my podcast. So that's going to be a different conversation for another day. But what I wanted to say is the main piece of advice I have here for you guys today is do it with the fear anyway, because fear is just false evidence appearing real. And so you just have to accept that, you know what, this isn't real and I'm not going to accept it. And I'm just going to allow myself to feel this feeling and know that on the other side of feeling this, I will be safe. I will be okay. I will be content. I will be happy. I will have peace, or whatever it is that you're looking for on the other side of this thing that you are so desperately trying to avoid. You will get it. You will, because that's just how these things work, you guys. So, yeah, boundaries are super important. Oh, excuse me. I'm really, really sick, and I think you guys can hear it in my voice. I'm really nasally, but excuse me. So, yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is our value as people, who we are. We need to learn to not sort of tie that to people's perception of us. The self, the being, the word self, even the word me, the word I, it's a very, very massive term to explore. What does being you mean if somebody else can simply decide that for you and you internalize it and that is suddenly what you are? And what's strange is there is a me sitting here right now speaking to you guys, but there was a me yesterday doing something. There was a me 20 years ago just playing in the playground. Is that no longer me? Of course it was still me. Of course it is me. So do you see what I mean by there are so many conversations I want to have with you guys? And the truth of the matter is the MILF tea just wasn't the place to do it. And it just wasn't me being authentic. Like, this is me really being truthful with you guys and just sharing my experience with you and just the knowledge that I've gained from my experience, you know. I'm no way near healed. I have so much trauma that I'm going through, not going through, but reliving from my childhood experiences, and that bring themselves up in the most random ways. And I suddenly get triggered and I'm like, ugh. But I'm learning. It's an everyday process, and it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't get easier, but it doesn't get harder. And I think that's one of the things that I'm slowly starting to learn as well, is to just be patient with myself. Take each day as it comes. So yeah, right now, my message to you guys is set your boundaries and do it assertively. And if you can't do it assertively, then do it with your voice fucking shaking anyway, because at some point you will feel absolutely okay saying no and saying yes. And that's one of the things that my mom would always say: you'll let your yes be your yes and your no be your no, and all of this stuff. And it's true. It really, really is true, you guys. So yeah, thank you guys so much for sticking with me on this one. This has been a really, really, really important topic to me. And yeah, I think it's important that I give myself the stage to sort of have these conversations with you guys and not feel like, oh, I'm some weirdo talking about her life and all of this crap and you guys don't want to know. No, I'm someone of value. I exist, and I want to share my experience of existence with the world and what I'm learning from this existence that I've been graced with by the powers that be. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful. I'm so grateful for this. Yeah, so grateful. Soulvation. This is my podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in with me, and hopefully I'll see you guys in another episode. Not hopefully, but I definitely will do. And the next one is going to be just as interesting as this one. So make sure you follow my MILF Tea page, because that's still just my normal Instagram. I probably will change the name. And yeah, this podcast is going to be available on Spotify. It'll be available on Apple podcasts. And I'm also going to be uploading the video versions of this to YouTube. But yeah, feel free to DM me. Let's have discussions about all of this stuff. Tell me about your inner child, like about the trauma trauma that you've experienced. Tell me how you're failing to set boundaries, and I'll tell you how I'm failing too. And, you know, let's just encourage one another to elevate our souls, and to find freedom, to find true freedom. And true freedom is honoring ourselves. That's it, really. True freedom is honoring ourselves. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.